It was just another morning in Los Angeles. The sun had barely risen above the hills, casting its gentle glow across the city, where everything moved quickly except for one small studio in West Hollywood. Inside, the lights were warming up, the cameras were being adjusted, and the makeup artists were finishing the final touches on a father and his 5-year-old son. The air buzzed with the usual low chatter of producers, crew, and interns, all preparing for another cheerful segment of a popular morning show. Elon Musk sat calmly on the studio couch, wearing a tailored blazer and a quiet smile. Next to him, his son, X-Small, wide-eyed, legs swinging slightly above the floor, watched everything with that kind of focused curiosity only children seem to possess. There was nothing scripted about the way he sat, his fingers tracing invisible shapes on the fabric of his pants, his eyes occasionally lifting to follow the swirl of lights on the ceiling. Everything had been planned to be light. A 10-minute piece about parenting. Laughs, maybe a few candid moments. Something heartwarming for a Wednesday morning. But what happened that day would leave the studio forever changed and echo across millions of screens around the world. As the countdown started, the show's host, Sarah Jennings, leaned forward with her trademark warmth. "You ready to go on television, sweetheart?" she asked the little boy. X nodded once, then said, so quietly that only the closest microphones caught it, "I've been ready since I woke up." The crew smiled. Elon chuckled. Sarah tilted her head, charmed by the comment. None of them knew what was coming. The intro music played. Applause rang through the set, and the cameras rolled. "Today," Sarah began, "we have someone very special with you's visionary Elon Musk and his adorable son, X." The two smiled into the cameras. Elon adjusted his mic. X waved to the lights. Still quiet, still observing. Sarah started with an easy question. "Elon, what's something unexpected about being a dad to X?" Elon began answering, something about how curious and bright X was. But mid-sentence, X leaned gently toward him, his voice soft and steady. "Can I talk about Jesus?" There was a pause, not long, but deep. Sarah blinked. Elon froze for a fraction of a second. The room fell quiet, a breath suspended in air. Sarah smiled gently. "Of course. What would you like to say?" X turned to the camera. He didn't move. He didn't giggle or squirm. He simply spoke, his voice clear, his expression calm. "People talk a lot about Jesus," he said, "but they don't really listen to him." The control room stilled. The host's cue cards trembled slightly in her hand. Even Elon, usually unshaken, leaned back as if the words carried more weight than anyone had expected. Sarah's voice softened. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" X looked down for a moment, then back up. "Jesus said to love people," he said, "even the ones who are mean. But adults don't do that. They just yell and fight." No one moved. The cameras didn't pan away. The crew didn't blink. Sarah didn't reach for another question. She simply sat with him in that stillness, letting the moment breathe. The studio wasn't used to this kind of silence. It wasn't awkward or empty. It was sacred. "What made you think about Jesus today?" Sarah asked. X shrugged. "Books. And I ask my daddy things." Elon cleared his throat quietly. "We read a lot together. He asks questions I don't always know how to answer." But X wasn't finished. He turned back to the host. "Jesus said to forgive people. That's hard. I tried, but sometimes I still feel angry inside." Sarah nodded slowly. "Forgiveness is hard for grown-ups, too." X looked at her seriously. "Then why did Jesus say to do something so hard?" No one answered. Not because they didn't want to, but because the question was too real, too pure, too unguarded. It wasn't a question meant for debate or theology. It was a question from the soul of a child who truly wanted to understand. Somewhere backstage, phones began to vibrate. A young social media intern texted the control room. "This moment is going viral." Sarah leaned closer, her voice nearly a whisper. "Have you ever had to forgive someone?" X nodded. "A boy at school took my dinosaur toy," I cried. "But then I thought maybe Jesus would have forgiven him." Elon turned to his son, eyes wet. "You were kind," X whispered back. "I just want to do what's right." And for that single moment, the world forgot it was watching a television show. This wasn't a segment anymore. It wasn't a press opportunity or a scheduled appearance. It was a sacred unfolding. A child, barely 5 years old, had opened a door few adults dare even to knock on. And just as suddenly as it began, it became clear. This boy wasn't here to impress anyone. He wasn't performing. He was simply speaking from the quietest, truest place in his heart. A stillness filled the studio, not the kind that begs to be broken, but the kind that tells you something bigger is happening. Then, as if sensing the weight in the air, X turned back to the camera and said, "Jesus told people to be like children, because kids don't know how to hate yet." The air shifted. The light on the set seemed softer. The silence deepened, and the hearts watching, both in the studio and across the world, began to open. The producer, who had years of live television under her belt, whispered to no one in particular, "Let it keep going. Don't cut away. Let it happen." Because everyone knew something holy was unfolding. If this touched your heart, you are warmly invited to be part of our community. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss stories that bring light to your soul. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your name and where you're watching from in the comments, and let us send you a special blessing in our next video. You matter here. You are welcome here. The words of a child don't echo like those of an adult. They don't arrive dressed in explanations or polished by intent. They arrive clean. And that morning, in a small television studio in Los Angeles, a clean truth had entered the air and no one knew exactly what to do with it. Sarah Jennings, the seasoned host, sat still, her cue cards forgotten in her lap. She had interviewed presidents, actors, scientists, but never had a 5-year-old child made the world stop like this. X looked around again. The cameras, the lights, the quiet. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't even aware that what he had said was profound. He was just telling the truth. His truth. "I think people forget what Jesus said," he continued softly. "He said to help people who don't have anything, but most people walk past them. They don't even look." A murmur moved through the room like a current under the floor. A cameraman shifted his weight, but didn't dare blink. A sound technician clutched his headphones tighter. Everyone was watching a miracle dressed in small clothes and soft eyes. Sarah cleared her throat, unsure whether to speak. "Did something happen that made you think about that?" X nodded. "There is a man near our house who sleeps on the sidewalk. I gave him my sandwich once, and later we gave him a blanket." Elon glanced at his son, visibly moved. His lips parted, but he said nothing. "But the next day," X continued, "he was still there, and I got mad." "Mad?" Sarah asked gently. "Yes, because I thought if you do something good, the sad things should go away, but they didn't." The studio fell into another silence, heavier now, thicker, charged with invisible emotion. Sarah bit her lip. "And what did you do after that?" X stared ahead for a moment, then said, I asked Jesus why he didn't fix everything, and then I cried a little. Elon reached over and took his son's hand. That simple, motion-quiet, unscripted made every heart-watching Titan. And then, X added, I thought maybe Jesus wants us to help fix some things too. The sentence lingered in the air, as if afraid to touch the ground. Outside the studio, the internet was erupting. Clips were being uploaded in real time, views multiplied by the thousands every few seconds. The Jesus boy, some started to call him. Others just shared the video with broken heart emojis and captions like, "This child just brought me to tears." But in the studio, none of that mattered. There was no internet here. No trending hashtags. Only the truth. Sarah wiped under one eye. X, do you think God hears you when you talk? Yes, he said without hesitation. Even when I whisper. But sometimes, he added, adults are too loud to hear him back. It wasn't a criticism. It wasn't a joke. It was observation, pure and undiluted. The kind that made people shift uncomfortably, not because it accused them, but because it saw them. Have you ever felt him answer you? Sarah asked quietly. X nodded. Not with words, but sometimes my chest gets warm, like when my daddy hugs me. Elon looked down, lips pressed tight, holding something back, maybe a tear, maybe a thought, too big to say out loud. Sarah placed her hand on her chest instinctively. The cameras caught the movement, and millions would later mimic it in their homes, in their cars, in the break rooms of hospitals and schools. X continued, still speaking with that strange clarity. I think adults forget how to feel things. When you're little, feelings come fast. Happy, sad, mad. But big people try not to feel. They just talk a lot. And just like that, the world flinched. Because he was right. In a world of noise, debates, shouting matches, and endless scrolls of information, a child had just reminded everyone of what had been lost. The soft center of the soul. Elon, the visionary billionaire, sat beside his son and said nothing. He was no longer a CEO in that moment. No longer a public figure. He was simply a father. Listening, perhaps, for the first time with the ears of a child. Then came the question that would shake the room. Daddy! X turned his face toward Elon, his voice low and curious. Do you think Jesus likes rich people? Time froze. Sarah looked at Elon. Elon looked at his son. The entire studio held its breath. X continued. Because Jesus said it's hard for rich people to go to heaven. Elon inhaled slowly. Yes, he did say that. X nodded. But you're rich. So, are we in trouble? The room tensed. Even the hum of the lights seemed to quiet. But Elon didn't flinch. He turned to his son, eyes soft, and said, Number. Not if we remember that money is something we use, not something we love more than people. X thought about it, then said, So, we should give more. Jesus would like that. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, and somewhere across millions of screens someone whispered, Amen. The moment lingered like holy incense. Then, slowly, Sarah leaned forward again. Do you want to say something to the people who are watching? X nodded once, turned to the camera with the stillness of someone who understands more than his age should allow, and said, Jesus doesn't want us to be perfect, just honest. And just like that, thousands of people watching live began to cry. Not because of sadness, but because of truth. If you felt something stir in your heart today, don't let it go. Click the like button and write AMEN in the comments to receive a special blessing in our prayers. And tell us which city you're watching from. We'd love to lift your name in our next video and welcome you into our growing community of light. You are not alone. You are seen. The studio had never felt so still. No applause, no stage directions, no whispers in earpieces, just a silence so full it felt like sound. A few moments earlier, a 5-year-old boy had looked straight into the camera and reminded the world that Jesus wasn't asking for perfection-only honesty. That single sentence had fallen like morning light over a world covered in noise, warming places in the soul that many had forgotten existed. Elon sat beside his son, his hands still wrapped around the small fingers that had just delivered one of the most tender truths ever heard on live television. He didn't speak, he didn't move. He simply held on like someone holding a miracle. And then, quietly, from the far end of the set, someone stepped forward. It wasn't planned. It wasn't in the script. A crew, member-own of the young women from the technical team, walked carefully toward the front of the stage. She moved slowly, reverently, as if not to disturb the air that had become sacred. In her hands, something small, simple, wooden. She gently placed it on the edge of the set and stepped back without saying a word. It was a cross. Not polished or grand, just a plain wooden cross, weathered by time and touch. Something she had carried in her backpack for reasons even she didn't fully understand. But in that moment, she had looked at it, and something inside her knew. It belonged there. X noticed it immediately. He slid off the couch with the quiet confidence of a child who isn't trying to impress anyone. Step by step, he walked to the cross, knelt beside it, and wrapped his small hands around its base. No one told him to. Everyone just watched. Then he stood, carefully, holding the cross in both hands, like something precious. He walked it back across the set, placed it gently into his father's hands, and said in a voice that seemed to shine, "I think this is heavy. Not just because it's wood, but because it means something." Elon looked down at the object in his hands, his eyes filling again. "Why are you giving this to me, buddy?" he asked softly. X shrugged. "Because you fix a lot of things, but maybe this will help fix you." The words landed like thunder wrapped in tenderness. Sarah gasped quietly. The cameraman wiped his cheek, and from backstage someone whispered, "That's it. That's the moment." Elon stared at the cross, his fingers trembling slightly as he held it not like a prop, not like a relic, but like something alive. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, with his voice just above a whisper, he said, "Thank you." And Sue had just handed his father more than any gift money could buy, climbed back up onto the couch, swung his legs as he always did, and smiled, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Outside the studio, across the internet, the moment exploded. It wasn't the kind of virality built on shock or outrage. It was something else. Something gentle, sacred, pure. People began sharing the image. A billionaire holding a simple wooden cross, gifted to him by a child who simply wanted to help his father be whole. Pastors used it in sermons. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Mothers cried over it in kitchens. Atheists posted it without commentary because some truths don't require belief to be beautiful. In that studio, no one moved. The lights seemed to dim on their own, not by schedule, but as if in reverence. A pause stretched out, and the crew didn't dare break it. Sarah cleared her throat quietly, her voice still shaky. "X, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?" X looked at the camera, tilted his head gently, and said, "Sometimes we think grown-ups have everything figured out, but I think Jesus gives children the light so we can help remind them." He smiled, and all over the world, people smiled back some with tears in their eyes, some with hands over their hearts, and some whispering prayers they hadn't said in years. The cameras had stopped rolling, but no one moved. The lights had dimmed gently, almost as if the studio itself knew that what had just happened shouldn't be rushed, interrupted, or forgotten. Not a sound echoed in the room, no footsteps, no whispers, no rustle of papers, only silence. The kind of silence that follows something sacred. Elon sat motionless on the couch, his hand still wrapped around the small wooden cross. His son, X, leaned against him, head resting softly on his shoulder, fingers drawing invisible stars, in the air childlike, innocent, peaceful. Sarah stood off to the side, her cue cards clenched in her hand, like they were the only solid thing left in the room. She looked at the pair in front of her and said the only words she could find. "We've had many guests over the years, but today is something we'll carry forever." Backstage, phones rang non-stop. The CEO of the network called twice. CNN, BBC, Fox News, and other stations had already requested the full clip. Pastors from every denomination were asking for permission to share it during their Sunday services. But none of that reached the little boy. He was busy showing his father how to make a heart shape with his fingers. "I do this when I'm happy," he said, demonstrating the gesture. Elon mirrored the motion, unsure at first, but then smiled softly when the shape came together. "Like this?" "Yes," X nodded. "That means your heart is soft now." Elon let out a breathone that seemed to carry years of weight. "Maybe it is." A few steps away, Sarah's producer approached quietly. "We need to frame this into a segment. It's already bigger than us." Sarah nodded. "Then let it stay pure. This wasn't just good television. This was truth." Back on the couch, X turned to his father again. "Can we give away some of our things?" he asked. Elon raised an eyebrow. "What kind of things?" "Like toys, and clothes, and money. We already do that, remember?" "Yes," said X. "But more. For people who sleep outside and feel cold." Elon looked at him for a long moment. Then to Sarah. Then back to his son. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's do more." X lit up with a smile that could have illuminated a cathedral. "Jesus would like that." Sarah swallowed a lump in her throat. "X, would you like to come back on the show someday?" He tilted his head. "Can I bring my Bible?" She laughed gently, her eyes still glistening. "You can bring anything you like." From the back of the studio, someone whispered, "I just prayed for the first time in 10 years. Another murmured, "I messaged my father. We hadn't spoken in months." But the boy didn't hear any of it. He was busy tracing stars again, his eyes on the lights, his mind somewhere softer, somewhere holy. The studio emptied slowly. People walked quietly, as if leaving church after the final hymn, reluctant to break the sacred stillness. At home that night, Elon tucked X into bed. The small wooden cross sat on the nightstand beside a well-worn stuffed animal. The air was still. The house quiet. "You know," Elon said, brushing back his son's hair, "you helped a lot of people today." X yawned. "Jesus saw." "I think he did." "Good," whispered the boy. "I didn't want to make a big deal. I just wanted to say the truth." "You did," Elon replied. "You reminded your father of what really matters." X turned over, hugging his stuffed animal tightly. "Dad?" "Yes? Do you think Jesus has toys in heaven?" Elon smiled in the dark. "I think he has everything that makes children smile." "Okay," X sighed. "Then I'm not afraid to go there someday." And just like that, he drifted into sleep hole, at peace, completely unaware that his words were still circling the world, waking hearts, healing wounds, and softening souls. Not because of theology, not because of doctrine, but because a child with soft eyes and an open heart had simply said what the rest of us forgot. It's not about being right. Maybe it's about being kind. And you, when was the last time you let your heart be soft? When was the last time you listened, like a child without needing to win, fix, or explain? If this story touched you, don't let the feeling pass. Subscribe now and become part of something gentle, something true. Click the like button to help us reach more souls with messages of light, and tell us your name and the city you're watching from so we can send you a special blessing in our next video. A revealing and glorious message is waiting for you. Just click the next video that's now appearing on your screen. It may be the light you didn't know you needed. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Amen.